Okay, we're going to go back into Ukraine. I'm sure many of you have been watching some of the footage coming out of Ukraine and have seen some of the footage of Russian armored columns getting hit and the questionable actions of the Russian troops during these ambushes, during these movements. So we're going to talk some on that. You know, how does the armored company team supposed to work together as they're moving through a built-up area? Built-up area can be a small town, it can be a small village, it can be a large city. But first, before we get into that, I'm going to toss a question out there. You're in a mechanized company team, so you're mixed infantry, engineers, heavy armor. Maybe you got some anti-aircraft artillery with you, guns for support. I'm going to give you some options here and let you think for yourself, which do you think is the correct answer on this. Okay, your company teams rolled right into an ambush. Do you A, scatter, and if you can't run fast enough, drop your weapons and gear and run away? Run away, save my life for another day. B, blow through the ambush, abandoning any vehicles that were hit behind along with any wounded. C, start laying down fire on the areas you were taking fires from, suppress those enemy fires, dismount your infantry, have them advance forward to reduce that position of the ambush, secure the immediate area, take care of your wounded, and then continue on with your movement. D, flatten the entire area ahead of you with artillery and airstrikes and then just roll through the carnage. Or E, button up and die. Think through your answer. I'm not going to give one to you. It's an individual choice. Now, the tactics I'm going to explain a bit to you here is things that I've read from the Tet Offensive, 1968, Vietnam. Tactics that were employed by the United States Marine Corps when they were trying to clear Hue, which is spelled H-U-E. This was the old imperial capital. It was occupied by the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese. Marines were sent in, clear them out. It was one of the largest urban battles that had been fought since World War II up to that point. So, we have defenders which are in here. They're marked in blue and vehicles green. We have our company team that's moving through, tan vehicles, red troops. Now, you do not have your tanks at the very front. You have dismounted infantry on each side of the roadway moving up, approximately a squad's worth on each side. They would be dismounted from armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles that are a little farther back. So there's a little bit of separation here between your lead troop and your first armored vehicle. You do have a tank at the head of your column. And then if you have the asset, you know what the hell you're doing, you have another tank right behind it. Why? In case this tank gets knocked out, you can push it out of the way and still keep moving through, and you still got that heavy armor asset in front. Remember, a tank can take a lot more ordnance than an armored personnel carrier, an MRAP, or an infantry fighting vehicle can, and definitely a hell of a lot more than a light-skinned wheeled vehicle. Behind that second tank, you see I got them kind of herringboned here. It depends on the width of the roadway. You will have your first armored personnel carrier infantry fighting vehicle. You'll have a squad inside there, or that squad will be traveling right alongside it or right behind it, or potentially right behind one of the tanks in front. And then another infantry fighting vehicle or armored personnel carrier, same thing. You want troops dismounted on the sides, moving up, especially with the lead tanks, a little bit in front of them. Their job, sweep ahead. Their mission is to look inside those windows, clear those buildings on the side, at least the front part of those buildings. Make sure there's no ambushes there waiting for them. There isn't someone hiding in there behind a window with a B-40 rocket or an RPG-7 or a law rocket, or, has a trigger to an IED with an IED buried in a roadway. They clear each building as best they can. Another squad will take their place if it's going to take them too long to clear one of the buildings. They clear it as fast as possible. You're not going to be 100% clear every single space in there. You're going to clear as much as you can, as fast as you can. It also depends on the operation. Are you trying to clear entire areas, make sure there's no enemy occupation, or are you moving through because you're trying to move farther ahead to take a larger objective? Say we're passing through a small town, small village, which is on the road, and we're going to the bigger city down the way. But you have that infantry pat up in front, dismounted, to check for the enemy's dismounts that could be in or on buildings. Each vehicle, or the tanks that are in front, if they have access to it, they're going to be loaded with either a high explosive round, like a high explosive squash head, a HESH round, or they're going to be loaded with a canister round. It just depends as to the type of vehicle and if they even have access to that type of ordnance. They haven't made canister rounds in decades. But you never know. There could be some out there, and it could work for that particular tank. If they got it, have it in there. The gunner's on there, inside, scanning with his thermal, scanning with his optics. Vehicles that are farther back, each vehicle is going to be herringboned their weapons off to the side, a little bit towards the front as they're moving down. Past the second tank going back into these infantry fighting vehicles or APCs, they're going to be concentrating their fires or vision upward, so that they can see around the tops of buildings. If they see anyone moving around on top of a building, automatically they open up on it. They start pouring in fire where they see that movement on top of the building, where they see that person getting in a position with a weapon. It's just automatic. You see the movement, open up. When you get up to the corner here, the infantry will check down the corner, check both sides of the streets here at this intersection, and they will notify the lead tank if it's clear or not. Could be a hand signal, could be a radio signal. Before they would cross, though, the intersection, the infantry crosses, they need to lay down some obscuration to the sides. Tossing out smoke to the front, to their sides, something that they did in Vietnam. The Marines found out if they fired a high explosive round, like a squash head, into the side of a masonry building on the corner, the dust worked to provide concealment for those infantry as they crossed this big danger area here to get to the next line of buildings to start covering for the advancing armor. You will run out of smoke grenades sooner or later. You will run out of smoke pots sooner or later. That's why the Marines came up with the idea of using high explosive rounds on masonry to cause dust to blanket the area. And it works. It worked really well. Now we got defenders here. The defenders will be located every floor, and it's going to be at random. You're not going to occupy your entire unit inside one building. You're going to spread it out. You may have the squad occupy one building here, maybe another building next to it. You're going to spread people out. When the enemy's coming up, if they're clearing the buildings properly, it's not uncommon that the defenders may escape out the back in order not to be decisively engaged, move up to link up with everyone else, kind of consolidate, put more people in on the positions over here, and they'll cross right across the road. The mechanized company team that's coming up, if they're lucky, they'll get eyes around the corner and notice them coming across the road. If that happens, they'll have a squad automatic weapon or a machine gun will come up right around the corner and start spraying them as they're coming across this danger area. Cut them down. Now, if you notice here, I got a tank hidden off here on the side. Doesn't matter how old that tank necessarily is. As long as it was produced after World War II, it can still cause damage on the main battle tank coming up. Without the infantry checking along the side ahead of the armor, if this tank moves forward here, as soon as he gets out into the open here, if he doesn't notice this tank over here, this guy can open up. And even if he's got an old T-54, he can probably still get in a kill shot on that fancy T-90 or M1 Abrams or Challenger 2 or Leopard 2 A7V that's coming into the roadway. I got a feeling that's one of the things the Ukrainians are doing. They're taking their old T-64s. They're getting close in on the more modern Russian armor and getting those kill shots in so that they get more energy hitting the side from the shorter distance. There was a lot of talk about the Ukrainians having old Soviet era armored piercing ammunition, older Sabo rounds, which don't have as much range, don't have as much power as the stuff being used by the Russians. Well, if you get them close in, especially a nice flank shot like this, doesn't matter how old that round is, it's probably going to go through the armor. And then this tank here, as soon as he would get his one shot in, he automatically stomp on the gas in reverse and pull out to behind the building while the gunner is reloading. And then repositions to hit from the side somewhere else farther down the way. Or just moves, get into position somewhere else and gets a shot at the next vehicle that comes up. Usually you're going to put your more casualty producing weapons, if you're the defender, on the top floors and the roof so that you get a larger kill zone, larger beaten zone for your rounds as you're pouring your fire in. Try to catch those troops out in the open. That's why the company team that's coming up here, the guys back here on the infantry fighting vehicles and the APCs are checking the roofs, checking the upper stories. They see any movement, they start pouring fire in before the defenders can start putting the fire in. You also want to keep watch as you're moving up as part of the company team for observers with radios or cell phones that could be positioned up on top of a roof. Very common in Baghdad. Observers up on top of a roof. Maybe they have binoculars, maybe they don't. Doesn't really matter. They seen movement out in the distance, got on that cell phone, got on that radio, whatever they had, sent the message out, letting whatever element up ahead know who's coming up, how much, that type of thing. Expect that you will see roads blocked off with damaged and destroyed vehicles. The reason that is set up like that, well, it could be a vehicle that was knocked out by a preparatory bombardment, taken out by an airstrike from an enemy fixed wing. Could have been from a mortar round. Or maybe it's a vehicle that was deliberately damaged and left there to block off the enemy's escape or advance down that roadway. Remember that maintenance company? What was it, the 501st or 571st, something like that, the Jessica Lentz bullshit? The Fedayeen had blocked off roadways with tire fires and larger vehicles or multiple vehicles so that the American column that was moving through couldn't escape to get out of the kill zone. Expect to see that when you're moving through an urban environment. If you're the aggressor the person that's on the offensive, the person that's moving through. A lot of times you get into that situation, you have knocked out vehicles like that blocking off a roadway. The reason it's probably blocked off is that's probably a good way for you to get out of that kill zone. They want you to keep traveling down that open path, the easy path, so they can get more and more fire in on you. They may have a barricade going across up here, but they don't want you flanking it. They want you in that kill zone as long as possible so they can take you out any way as possible. Molotov cocktails, IEDs, machine guns, anti-tank rockets, anti-tank guided missiles. There, I gave you a little bit on the mechanized company team moving into a built-up area. I told you one little tactic that was employed by U.S. troops in Vietnam, and it was apparently very effective. Don't do like the Russian army. Stay inside your vehicles and just try to, we'll just roll through the ambush and we'll see what happens. If you know your enemy has anti-tank weapons, especially things that can actually take you out, dismount that infantry, have them start clearing the buildings on the side. Have them start clearing the likely areas that you can get ambushed from. If that potential area that you can get ambushed from is too farther away, here I'll give you a quick example. Let's say instead of a building here, we got a big cluster of trees that's off in the distance here. Well, we may not be able to advance the infantry up there because of distance. What we can do is train main guns either from an infantry fighting vehicle or a tank in that direction. So if any fire is encountered from over there, we automatically start putting those main gun rounds, that 25 millimeter or 30 millimeter cannon rounds into there, or a couple of the main gun rounds from the tank. Like I said, the high explosive squash head or high explosive rounds or canister rounds. Take that position out with your long range fires, and then as the vehicles come up behind you, as you would be moving past it, the lead vehicle will reposition back to focusing straight ahead. The follow-on vehicles will keep orientating their weapons towards that position. And it's not uncommon where a follow-on vehicle, even though this fire's been suppressed from this farther position, a follow-on vehicle might still pour some rounds in there just to make sure. Because until you actually have your troops sweep that area, you assume it's still occupied and it can still cause you problems. Clear as mud? Get you thinking on some stuff here? I'm not an expert at urban tactics. I've only picked up a few things over the years from the training that I've done and things that I've read. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.